As we begin episode 4, we thought it would be a good time to recap what we have covered so far by showing you our City Chronicle investigation board. We begin back in 2020 as Roman Gray began his investigation. Roman was an undercover FIB agent who had successfully infiltrated the Faceless. Roman had began renting a property in Polito, which gave us our first direct links between the Faceless and Wolves International. Their property fell victim to an explosion on April 15th, 2026, after multiple groups in the city had attempted to follow the bank records of a man named Ryan Gibson, which we now know was a fake name and was actually Roman Gray. We also interviewed Richard Dark, who told us about the first public faceless operation, which took place at Humane Labs on October 13th, 2024. This subsequently led to the death of Asher Murphy, who was a scientist that had been accused of being a leak and was murdered by the Faceless. We then heard how Ryan Keeger had contacted Richard Dark in an attempt to alert him to a group called the Oracle. Ryan Keeger was murdered by the Faceless in an operation called Hollow Pulse. Then we interviewed former State Marshal Director Gunnar Kane, who talked to us about Operation Dread Torrent. This was an operation designed to flood Los Santos with weapons and develop key connections with people that were going to be known as Faceless assets. Gunnar also told us how state marshals began to work with Darkstone, a military contractor that provided weapons and vehicles to help with the fight against the Faceless. In today's episode, we will take a look at how Roman Gray was investigating Darkstone and also show you exclusive details of our own investigation.
Darkstone is a military contractor that was involved in the first known Faceless operation back in October 13th, 2024. They became widely visible around the city as they slowly began to work with state marshals by providing them with guns and also with Apache helicopters, which law enforcement are still using to this day. Publicly, they are a viable alternative to the Faceless, but behind closed doors, they seemingly have deep connections to the terrorist organization. Before Darkstone, there was a group called Blackridge. Several key players were members of Blackridge, including Jonathan Kane and Jake Forrest, aka Delta One of Darkstone. In fact, the bank records of Roman Gray show that he was investigating Jake Forrest back in 2023. Blackridge eventually became Darkstone and was funded by a man named Victor Blackwell. These documents show you that Victor was a key investor. Here's where things get into the gray area. See, Victor was also an investor for the Faceless. Just to add another layer of complexity, we know that key members of Darkstone also worked within the FIB. In fact, just by comparing the logos of Darkstone and the FIB, you can see the similarities between the two. Darkstone have been publicly paraded as an enemy of the Faceless, but their past shows the military contractor and terrorist group are deeply intertwined, perhaps even formed at similar times. So why would investors seemingly set up a terrorist group and a direct rival within the same structure? It may just be as simple as investors seemingly creating a conflict, then financially benefiting on both sides, or it could be something much more sinister than that.